Hey all and welcome back. So the Titans Return figures have finally dropped to my area and I wanted to pick one up to see exactly how cool they are, to see if it's something I want to really collect. So we have here Furos and Hardhead. I didn't have any of the original Headmaster figures, and my understanding is the ports on these are not compatible with the original G1 port. So that is one downside. However, I think stylistically they may not mesh anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. The only flaw I see in that is if you've been collecting Fans Project, any other type of Headmaster that may work with a G1 style slot, this isn't going to work with it. However, they may go well on the shelves together. On the back it shows the transformation a little bit, and it has some of the other figures coming out, as well as mentions the compatibility with the rest of the line. So let's go ahead and open it up and check it out. Now here we have in the package, and there's something to be said. If you've been collecting the Combiner Wars series, you do like the line, you've come to accept a certain level of lightness and hollowness to the figures. This is still present here. However, I would say this is a slight step up in engineering just as a aesthetic figure, because they've done some interesting things with the coloring and the molding to give it more contrast and variation in design rather than just one chunk of plastic with some random paint apps. They've done a really interesting thing here with this chest piece and this waist. Very simple, but it really stands out. And this green, there's something really great about this green. Now the weapon, I'm not as keen that this weapon's in the same color. It makes it feel a little more generic. However, on the body, the way it's used there, and with the contrast with this orange canopy, it definitely does look good. Now, size comparison, here is a Combiner Wars Hound, and you can see now he is a little bit slimmer. This is just a hair heavier of a figure. However, they'd obviously class the same. So, move him aside. One of the things they're packing in now, they're bringing back the cards. So we had comic books and cards kind of alternating between some of these figures in the Combiner Wars line. However, in this line, it looks like it might just be the cards. Now, from what I remember, they had tech specs that would happen on the chest when you pop the heads in on the G1 figure. And I suppose this is supposed to represent that. Shows his strength, speed, intelligence, and firepower. I do think he has sort of gorilla-like proportions, and that's due to this wrist joint here. So he does have wrist movement, but that section has to rotate from there. And I guess the extra mass required of that gives the arms a little bit longer of a proportion than I think I prefer. However, once you bend the arms, it doesn't stand out as much, and it's definitely a good-looking figure. But as far as articulation goes, we do have the wrist swivel. There is a double-jointed elbow, which is nice. Hip rotation, or thigh swivel. Single-jointed knee, however, they have angled the back here in a way where you can get it full 90 degrees. There is no ankle tilt, but they do have the permanent cut slant here that we've become accustomed to in the Combiner Wars line. We also have a hinge at the shoulder on a rod where there's a ball joint, and rotation at the base of this elbow joint. So it's got a fair bit of articulation. The head does move, but it is very loose. That is definitely one of the weaker things. I hopefully can do something about that, but as it is, you can turn it, but as far as it being very stable, it's kind of rattly. This turret here, it's on a set of multiple hinges, so you can pose it, and it's also part of the transformation. And speaking of transformation, let's go ahead and do that. So let's pop out the weapon. We'll pop off the head here, and this is a very secure connection. I don't know if over time we'll see some wear. It seems to be designed to where it kind of flexes outwards. So I think in normal use, if you're displaying this as a collector, it might not be so bad. But maybe after years of off and on transformation, you might see a little bit of wear of that. So we'll set the head to the side. Move this turret down, so this whole section here folds out, and you can see the groove here on the hinge where the barrel rests. And it's kind of neat how this is, and this does come off, and it has a little canopy that opens. Legs fold in, and this is something that is very prominent in engineering as far as the Combiner Wars line. Feet fold up. Of course, hands fold in, like we showed earlier. Elbows collapse. This is a very simple transformation. And this part here will fold out and flat. And then we can lock the legs there. And then arms shift down, and there's a little hexagon here, and this joint here will just kind of lock into place. And I think the Combiner War line has done a really excellent job of sort of capturing G1, giving these nice looking figures very simple transformation and nice playability. I think even though there were some sacrifices in quality and with the hollowness and stuff, they did make things that were fun to play with and interesting as they were just to be figures. So there we have the basic tank mode. Actually, sorry, fold that under as well. So that flattens that bottom section, which, you know, we're not going to be looking under it a lot. It has got some hollowness. Not too bad though. Not a lot of obvious, not really any obvious robot parts. So it's well designed in that respect. Turret still has its up and down movement. You can do some different configurations there. If it's in a raised position, you kind of have some rotation. And as far as the weapon goes, I don't see anything underneath. You can hide it, though. You do have this peg section here. You can place it. Not huge on that, but it's not bad. I mean, it is a place to store it. I think what takes away from it is you have so many hollow bits on this weapon from the molding that it does detract from the overall look. So it's something I probably would not display with it, but it's not the worst. So we can open up this cockpit. Now let's go ahead and look at the transformation of this head unit. There's the face here, and it's all very simple. Just fold the legs out. Then you have the head that actually is on a joint, and it is the joint for the figure itself, which is probably why it's so loose. And it doesn't feel too loose on its own as a head, but maybe the weight of the head itself just puts too much stress on that. And then you have arms here. Kind of have some outward motion, but not a lot. And you can move them forward, though they seem pretty stiff. The legs are molded together, quite small. So with the tank here, you got this canopy you can open. You can fold the legs, have him sort of in a gunner position. And there's a little slot here I think this can lock into. Doesn't seem to really lock, but you can sit him down and he does sit in there alright. Yeah, it just seems to rest in there. Still a neat feature. But you do have this canopy that does hang. That's alright design-wise. Adds to the playability. It's not bad. And then we can place this back and, of course, have the cockpit. It's nice having these multiple battle stations for when you buy the extra head units, and you can have multiple ones running in the vehicle mode. And of course he can fit in there as well. Definitely a cool little setup. As far as vehicle mode, simple, fun transformation, nice molding, nice aesthetic, looks really good. Of course you still have the port there, so if you wanted to do a this seems a little tricky to get up. It's easier if I just do that and pop him out. So put him back in head mode, fold the arms, the legs down. So if you want to do a, GUR head mode, or you have the head and robot and vehicle mode, we can do that as well. But overall, cool figure. I think it's a nice beginning entry of this line. I'm going to keep my eyes out for some of the other ones. I am kind of leaning to a couple of the colorways from the Takara variations a little bit more. So we'll see how those look once they release more photos. Definitely worth something to look into if you really like the Headmasters and you really like this type of figure and you've been happy with the Combiner Wars line so far. I think it's definitely something worth at least checking out at the store, because since it's already in robot mode, you can see kind of right there if you like it. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you all next time.